I'm going to create different programming and I'm going to see what fills the best and where the highest demand is. But that doesn't fully answer the question of what is my upper limit pricing? It's really not are you too expensive? It's, are you valuable enough that people think that you're worth paying that amount for? But you owe it to your clients to run a profitable business. If you don't build in profit, you're basically borrowing time and you're not preparing your business for the future. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Cheer Biz Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Cotton, and today we are going to be talking about how to test your pricing and when you shouldn't actually do that, and a bunch of other things as it relates to pricing and making sure you set the right prices and do right by your clients and your business. Now, before we get into the episode, please head on over to Cheer Gym Owners on Facebook and All-Star Cheer Coaches and Owners on Facebook. And you've joined those groups where we have a ton of amazing conversations. You can ask questions and engage with me and the other next gen coaches. Now, if you've done those things, I need you to make sure that you get registered for our conference June 20th through the 22nd in Dallas, Texas. It is the best conference in the industry, and you're not going to want to miss it. We have amazing speakers. Corey Ricketts is going to be there. I know he's doing some hands-on spotting training, and I know he's going to be doing some tumbling classes. We just announced that Kat Haley is going to be teaching. We have some amazing coaches tracks, as well as myself and the other next-gen owners, and Jason Larkins, and some other super intelligent gym owners and gym directors who are going to help you take your gym to the next level. So make sure you join us in Dallas the 20th through the 22nd of 2025. Now, let's dive into the subject of how you should test your prices, how you should release pricing changes, etc. Recently saw a comment that was from a parent who, it was another one of those anonymous posts. And I don't love those. They're a little bit annoying, but I will tell you, to get to be a fly on the wall and read those anonymous posts, every once in a while I go, is that someone talking about my gym? But for the most part, I don't see that very often. This was not one of those ones, although I am not really apologetic about the fact that we charge a profit and that we charge what we charge. And I mean, my families know that I have my book, Charge What You're Worth. I literally wrote a book opening the doors on how I make decisions in regard to pricing and what we do. So I'm kind of a wide open book there, literally, but they raised some questions, and I am a big fan of testing prices. So let's talk about how to test your prices and what prices can you test. Now, unfortunately, if you're a long-standing gym, it's going to be a little bit harder to test your prices because you have a current clientele and they are not going to be super receptive to their prices changing willy-nilly, whether that be in your all-star program or your class program. So the first thing to remember is that when we're looking at testing tolerance for a price, it is important to know that we're generally doing that with new members. So when someone new is coming to, when we decide that we want to test a price, we're going to implement that on the front end for new people joining, not necessarily just across the board implement it for everyone throughout our program. So I like to test in that method where I do my math and I figure out where things need to be. And then I like to give myself a 3 or even 6 month buffer period of charging this higher price for anyone who's joining now. And I keep my current clients grandfathered in to their old pricing. Now, this works best with classes. I'm not a huge fan of it on the all-star side of things, and I'll go into why in just a second. But this works great with our class pricing because those clients who are just coming in and taking a tumbling class or a private lesson or those kind of things, they are generally speaking more short-term than my all-star team athletes. For instance, our all-star program has an over 89% retention rate so far going into next season. It might actually be higher than that right now. So we have a really, really amazing retention rate, and that's year over year. We're seeing athletes coming back year over year over year, whereas recreational 13-month length of engagement is like really awesome for us. That means kids are staying for at least a year. And knowing that we're going to have kids who drop in and out every 3-6 months because they go do different other sports and things. But then when they would come back, my pricing would be at a higher rate. So testing it in that manner where we're testing it with new clients helps us discover where the tolerance is for the product that we're offering. This is basically market research. And most companies do this in some way, shape, or form. What is that upper limit of price? Now, there are business coaches out there that will tell you, hey, if you haven't 2x, 3x, 4x your prices to see if people will pay for it, you haven't truly tested your pricing. I'm going to be honest, I think those people are really smart and I respect them tremendously, but I disagree in our industry. I don't know that the tolerance is there for a 3-5x price increase. However, that depends on where your prices are at. If you are at a $49 a month for monthly tumbling, then I think you probably do have the ability to 2x your prices for most areas in the United States. If you're like me and you're already over the $100 mark for one class a week, then I don't think that I really have the ability to 2x or 3x my pricing for 1 hour a week classes. So you've got to find that, and that is how you test. Now, when it comes to testing our prices with our all-star programming, one, I do think you need to set your prices correctly. And yes, you may test them and say, hey, the season price is X. And then if you get a lot of pushback or you see a ton of registration not come in, then you look at, okay, where can I cut expenses to decrease the season cost? Or where can I offer a different product like a non-travel or a novice or a prep program that allows athletes to engage or enroll at a slightly lower price point, but still get the great services and get the experience? That's typically how I'm going to test in an all-star realm. Is I'm going to create different programming and I'm going to see what fills the best and where the highest demand is. But that doesn't fully answer the question of what is my upper limit pricing. And this is really hard. It's not a simple answer. But with All-Star, I believe the best way to set your upper limit pricing is to, number one, read my book and use the pricing calculator to determine what your monthly tuition should be. So spend the time calculating the numbers, look at all the details and say, okay, I know based off of XYZ factors with this profit margin, I need to make sure that my pricing is at this number. And you can play with those profit margin amounts and you can see where kind of your tuition should fall. Now, you need to make sure that there is a profit margin in there. That is, in my opinion, a non-negotiable. It doesn't have to be massive necessarily, especially if you've never had profit before, but you owe it to your clients to run a profitable business. If you don't build in profit, you're basically borrowing time and you're not preparing your business for the future. Inflation is a very real thing. Your price on your building is going to go up. People who are renewing their leases right now are seeing anywhere from a 30 to 60% increase in rent. And if you've not been raising your prices annually on your all-star tuition, when you go to make a price raise, you're going to have to jump massively to meet your new needs. So consistently increasing your price, I think, is a really, really important move. So we follow the pricing calculator. And then from there, you have two different ways to test and figure out, maybe you decide, okay, I'm going to look between a 5, 10, 15, 20% profit margin. Then the best way to do it is to survey your current clients, not put it out and see what their response is and then backpedal if they're unhappy, but you can actually do a true survey. So you can either sit down in person doing focus groups. That's my preferred method. Or you can do an anonymous survey. And generally what we want to ask is we want to figure out kind of where the tolerance is for people. So we give them those different price points and we say, at this price point, would you feel that the value you're receiving is cheap? Would you feel that this is reasonable? Would this feel like this amount is too much? It allows us to kind of gauge where people feel the highest price point is. And you might do this a couple different times. So I would actually probably start here in this circumstance saying, okay, I'm going to go with my highest profit margin at this price point. Does competitive cheer feel cheap, correct, affordable, slightly overpriced, or unaffordable, overpriced, right? That gives you a ballpark to kind of fall in, and you're just doing it on a focus group. You're not actually putting it out and then having to then pull back and change it, be like, oops, sorry, you were mad. And what that does is it makes it look like you were kind of price gouging people when you oftentimes weren't. Most gym owners are just going, oh, shoot, people are unhappy. I want people to be happy. I want people to cheer. I want my gym to keep growing and surviving and thriving. And so therefore, I'll cut something else. I'll maybe do one less competition. I'll find ways to decrease costs by decreasing the hard expenses. And that is kind of the strategy there. Do those focus groups. That's number one, and that's my preferred method. Number two way to test it is to just go within yourself, your staff, your admin team, and say, what price point are we comfortable with? Like, looking at these price points, where do I feel like we should be? Now, I don't love this one because I oftentimes find that gym owners' feelings are not super accurate in terms of what the market is actually willing to bear. Most gym owners underprice themselves, hence my title of my book being Charge What You're Worth. I would like to see them set their pricing a little bit more aggressively from the perspective of ensuring that they're covering all their expenses, all of their staff payroll, and building in a profit margin. So that's my personal approach. I would rather just go to the clients and do some focus groups, ask your people who are your ideal client avatar to come in and give you that information. Your top 10, 15 people, you should be able to name them off the top of your head of like, these are my ideal client. If I could recreate this client and I could have 100 of this parent, this is what I want. And figure out what it is on the pricing side that they respond to and that they like. Now, I don't think that you should just test your pricing in All-Star Cheer. I think you should know what your pricing needs to be. If you are just testing and guessing and budgeting by gut is what I call it, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're either going to underprice and then be short on money that you need to have to pay for very important things and deliver your product, or you're going to overprice and you're going to just kind of go, well, we're going to go with this number because that's what I saw someone else charges, and it's actually going to be way more than you need to charge, and you're potentially going to price people out of your sport, and you're not going to be making a sound financial decision. After you've set your pricing, I think it is always important to go back and say, how am I delivering value? Now, you may choose to change something. You may choose to take something away. I am not a big fan of including tumbling classes in your all-star team tuition for a variety of reasons. One, it doesn't encourage people to take additional tumbling classes. Two, I have seen it be poorly delivered in a lot of gyms where it's like, yes, you get, you're paying this and that includes a tumbling class. And what ends up happening is that tumbling class just turns into a longer practice or another practice time, or people don't come to that tumbling class because it's not a mandatory practice. It's just a tumbling class. And so they're paying for it in their tuition, but then they're not coming. Your expenses are exactly the same. And you're not even getting the result of athletes tumbling consistently to work on their skills. So I don't love that. But if you've always offered a tumbling class and you are then going to increase your pricing and take away that offering, then you need to find another way to explain to people why they're getting value from your product. Why does your price increase? Why should they pay more and in their mind get less? So that could be, we're doing workouts, or you're getting a discount on your tumbling classes. You're getting a discount on private lessons. We're getting this different piece of equipment. Now, I love to build value without having to increase a lot of hard costs. That's why I'm not a big fan of like really blingy practice outfits or things like that, because I think that they oftentimes are a distraction and they end up costing a lot more than people budget for them when they set their beginning of season budget, and or they budget for it, but then it doesn't factor in shipping, and then they get the shipping costs and now they're behind. So I'm not a huge fan of that approach there. But find a way to add value. Add value. Generally speaking, your price, although competitive cheer is very expensive, and I actually think there is some pricing tolerance there, especially in like classes and things like that, your price is not so significant that people aren't willing to pay it if they believe the value is there. Like, it's really not are you too expensive? It's, are you valuable enough that people think that you're worth paying that amount for? Now, if you're a high priced item, just know that you're going to have a less amount of clients. But that's typically how I would approach kind of testing my pricing. Now, it is much more complex than that. And each gym, I think, needs to build their strategy very specifically. But that is the baseline. We test our class pricing with new members. And could you do that with All-Star? Sure. You could say, hey, anyone new, this is your price sheet and it's more. I think that gets really confusing and chaotic and potentially has negative impacts. But you can test it with new members for class pricing. And then for your All-Stars, set your pricing, figure out, your good, better, best. What are my value adds? And then go to your people and say, hey, if you're getting all of this at this price, how do you feel about that? Does that feel cheap? Does that feel affordable? Does that feel too expensive? Another great thing to ask your clients is, how would you feel if this product was no longer around? Like if we no longer had All-Star Cheer, how would you feel about that? Because people are like, I wouldn't really care. That lets you know there's some significant problems. You also can ask the question of, what is the most you would be willing to pay for something like this? Again, you want people who are going to be honest with you. You want your ideal client avatar. They're going to give you much better feedback than, I don't want to necessarily go to the family that is always kind of behind and struggling with their bills. And not that I don't care about their opinion, but I already know that they're going to be much more financially constricted, and that's going to change their perspective because they're in kind of a scarcity mindset, as they should be. And so I'm not as interested in their opinion of this. I'm really looking at my ideal client avatar. Now, if they're your perfect client avatar and they're maybe just going through a hard time, I think you could maybe still ask them, because there's a reason they're still paying for your product. It's also great in these focus groups to ask things like, do you still want to go to end of season events? We did one of these where I hate end of season events in a lot of ways. Like, I love them, but I also hate them. I hate how expensive they are. I don't like, we fly from Oregon. So we're going from Oregon to Florida. Entire families will go because it's a great trip. They love it. But entire families will spend more than it costs for the entire season to cheer for me. Like what actually costs to do cheerleading, they'll spend that just for D2 Summit or Worlds. And I kind of hate that. So there was a couple years ago, we sat down with our focus groups and we said, hey, how would you feel if we did not attend end of season events? Or, and we basically had them vote between, not go at all, go to a different end of season event provider, go only on paid bids, or go on any bid. And 95% said go on any bid. Now, I think it's worth redoing that study every couple of years because I think your demographic changes, but it was really interesting because I would have thought, people are probably tired of paying for this. They probably only want a paid bid. And 95% of our people were like, no, we want to go no matter what. And so that let me know, hey, don't make that decision. So that is how I would go about testing your pricing and really finding out what your limit is. Now, to truly test correctly, you need to set your initial price correctly. I don't want you to willy-nilly just pick out numbers and test. I want you to do the math, do it correctly, because your math can lie to you. Go back and listen to that episode. Read the book would be my recommendation, and really do that math diligently. And even if you read the book, you can make mistakes on that calculator. So I want you to make sure that you read it really closely. And if you need a little bit of advice, reach out to me. But do the math and make sure that you're covering your operating expenses. Make sure that you're covering your payroll. Make sure that you're covering your profit margin. You've got to make sure you've done those things correctly. Otherwise, you're testing pricing, but your pricing may be completely wrong. So yes, the market will tell you, yeah, people will pay that, but it's not the right price. You could sell tumbling classes for $29. That doesn't mean it's the right move. And to be completely honest, my enrollment has grown since we raised our prices rather than shrunk. So Oftentimes, your pricing can also communicate that you're not a valuable product because you're not expensive enough for people to care about. So, a number of considerations there, but that is how I would go about testing my pricing in my cheer gym and how I do go about testing my pricing when I need to figure out what the next step is. Although oftentimes I'm doing my calculator, I kind of know what my tolerances are because I've been in business for 15 years, and then I'm just setting my price. Now, that doesn't mean I don't ever test anything. I do, but I don't need to test quite as frequently within my gym. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the episode. As always, share it with someone who would get something great out of it. I hope to see you in Dallas the 20th through the 22nd. And with that, we will catch you on the next episode.